You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia.
Hi, everybody.
How are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am great. So we have a special episode today. We have two guests, and we are doing another podcast collab.
Very exciting.
Yes. So on with us are Kai and Jay. So
hello.
Say hello to the chillers, please.
Hi. Hey guys, I'm Kai.
I'm Jay.
And they are from the podcast Chambers of the Occult.
Yeah. Chillers is such a great name for your listeners, by the way. Like it's
Well, thank
it
you.
rolls off the tongue. It's awesome.
Did you come up with that, or did they name themselves?
They don't talk to us.
Oh,
No, they do.
Now, come on. My mom
feel
does.
We feel
They
that.
do. Yes, Talia's mom will talk to us. No, we do have a few people who will comment, but honestly, they're not very vocal. But we'd love them to be.
No, we get it.
We
Yeah.
crave audience interaction, but
They're vocal in the way of being very supportive and complimentary, but in terms of interacting specifically when we'll bring up a topic and ask them to, pretty shy in that way.
yeah, shy is a very
Yeah.
good word. Yes,
We know what you mean.
we believe they're out there, but so,
we're
yeah.
getting some downloads, so it must be
We
good
are.
somewhere.
Yeah, we are.
they'll answer surveys, but they won't comment or anything.
Yes. So and
To make it as
yeah,
easy
we
as
just
possible for him.
we just came up with that name after the Chillworthy title came to be. So, but speaking of that, we wanted to ask you guys, give us a little bit of, what your podcast vibe is all about, when you started, what's going
How
on
did you
over
come up
there.
with the name?
Go for it, Jay.
Honestly, I took a piece of paper and I wrote down name after name after name after name until something stood out. And Chambers of the Occult was the only thing that stood out. And I was like, cool, am I going to be tired of this name? And after a couple of days, I was like, I'm not tired of it. I was like, I think that's the name.
Okay.
And that's what it was.
Yeah.
What
It's
I like
so
to tell
unique.
everybody who asks is that this is Jay's brainchild. This was his idea for a long time. He simply plucked me and dragged me onto the show, and it's been a great experience so far.
Very nice.
That is
I
a
love
great
it.
way to put it. Because, the only thing I came up with was the name. The whole podcast, it's Sky and I, but the name was just cool. Yeah.
So I'd say our vibe is also in sort of the true crime, serious but silly type of realm. We cover the serious topics, but we've also got lots of humor, lots of banter in there. We try to keep it lighthearted when we can, and get a little deeper if we need to.
Yeah.
But I think a way that we differ a little from you guys is that we're not purely true crime on our podcast. Jay, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. We do both true crime and paranormal. We actually met working at a haunted house. We met
Incredible.
at the
That is
Winchester
awesome.
Mystery House as tour guides. And
Okay.
after a while, I was like, hey, do you want to do a podcast?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically,
When do we start?
yeah. And then we put it
I
off for a
love that.
while because we wanted to start in person. And then 2024 started. And we were just like, might as well start remotely.
Let's
and
do
we
it.
did.
Hell yeah.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, it has been.
So
So,
we're
yeah.
excited
That's
to
a
be
really
here today.
cool
Thank you
story.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we have that little passion for paranormal and true crime, but we come with that little different point of view because we actually work in a quote unquote haunted house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Front
Which is funny because
lines.
I'm really skeptical. You'll you'll hear it. So I feel like I give a good balance in lots of ways. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Well,
And I'm the type of person that would die first in a horror movie.
Yes, you
Oh,
would.
die
Same.
first
Are
in a
you
horror
going up
movie,
the
okay.
stairs?
I am walking deeper into the basement.
Oh, way worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I have walked deeper into the basement, so yes.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah,
So-
so that's a little bit about us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, awesome. And, we're very happy to have you. So just for the chillers, how it's going to work is, Talia and I, neither one of us are going to be presenting anything. Kai and Jay are going to be telling us something. So this will be nice because now neither Talia nor I know what the topic is.
Nice.
Keeps it interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
unless Talia has any objections, I say take it away.
Absolutely. Get ready for a million questions and exclamations.
Great.
All right. Well, let me set the tone, I bet. We always like to get right into it. So,
Go ahead.
you guys know that sound, when an old house settles at night? The creaky floorboards, the wind, knocking on the glass, distant tick of a clock in the distance. Now, imagine you're in a small town in Iowa. It's 1912. A family of 6 and 2 young house guests are asleep upstairs. And by morning, every last one of them will be dead.
Yikes.
Bludgeoned, mutilated, their faces unrecognizable, and their killer completely gone. Vanished, no trace. Now, we cover ghost stories on our podcast, but this isn't a ghost story. This is the Villisca Axe Murders.
All right.
So if you'd like to go for it,
Yeah.
Jay.
So, before we talk about the terror that unfolded inside the house of the corner of 2nd Street and Josiah Street, let's talk a little bit about who lived in that house, who they were. It's the Moore family, and they were just like any other family. They were a devoted family that was composed of Josiah B. Moore. He was 43 years old. He was a respected businessman. He ran a successful farm that was an equipment store in the town, and he had made a name for himself, though not without stepping on a few toes in the process. But to most people, Josiah was a kind, hardworking man with big laugh and a bigger heart. His wife, Sarah Montgomery Moore, was 39. She was the image of community spirit. She was deeply involved in the Presbyterian Church, especially in the Children's Day program, which she helped organize every year. She was soft-spoken but strong, and her love for her family was obvious to anyone that knew her. And together they had 4 children. Herman, who was 11, he was described as smart, curious, and always full of energy. Catherine, who was 10 years old, she was described as sweet, sharp, and already showing signs of leadership. Boyd, who was 7, he was mischievous in a way that only middle children can be. And then Paul, the baby, who was just 5 years old, always running to keep up with his siblings.
So they were honestly one of the model families of this small town, Villisca, Iowa. Well-liked, devoted in their faith. And they had a really good family going for them. They were involved in the community. They were involved in their church, right? And just like any other Sunday, this Sunday, June 9th, 1912, it was supposed to be really just another perfect day. The morning began like all of the other ones. They got dressed in their Sunday best. They walked to church. Beautiful service as always. The Moore family, by the way, Moore. So, like, more. I don't know.
Got it.
So they go to church, but this wasn't just any ordinary day. Like Jay said, it was Children's Day. It was super exciting for them. That night, there would be a special Children's Day program. It was a beloved tradition in Villisca where the kids actually took the center stage there at the church. Sarah, the mother, had worked hard organizing it, and the more children were excited to perform. They sang, they recited their verses, they smiled as the congregation and all the audience, clapped and cheered them on. Also performing that night, though, were two sisters from a local family as well, Lena and Ina Stillinger, ages 12 and 8 respectively. We probably will stumble over the names Lena and Ina a lot.
Yeah. Very similar. And they were sisters. Lena and
they
Ina.
were sisters, yeah.
It's like the last episode, Johnny.
Penny Pen, Johnny John.
Yes.
Hopefully we don't have another Puyallup situation.
Oh my God. He struggled, man. I love that you just said that.
Puyallup, you did good.
Yeah, it was rough. It was freaking rough. And listen, I mean, I feel like, and I mean, Talia, if you disagree with this, but I don't think you will. I feel like we're both captivated because you both have very good pacing as you tell a story.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm like, because we have done a collab before where we were jumping in and talking, and I'm just fixated. Like, it sounds. I mean, yeah, both of you have a very good like narration voice of just like, all right, everybody, sit down and listen. So.
Cool.
So congrats.
Feel free to jump in
for a living.
True.
Tour guides.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you have it perfected.
Feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah.
Cut us off, please. We, sometimes we like to hear ourselves talk a little too much.
Yeah. Sometimes even we have a hard time interrupting each other.
All right. Well, you don't have to tell her twice.
Anyway, Lena and Ina, Stillinger girls, they were friends of Catherine, the young daughter there of the Moore family. Like I said, sweet girls from like a neighboring farm family. They planned to go home after their service, but Sarah, the mom of the Moore family, invited them over to stay. Last minute decision. Their parents agreed under the condition that, of course, they return early Monday morning the next day to help with their chores. But this decision would become a central point of heartbreak in the days to come.
Yeah. After the service that ended at 9:30, the 8 of them would walk home under the dim light of a warm June evening. The neighbors saw them chatting, smiling, holding hands, and then they stepped inside their white house just before 10 p.m. It was a quiet night, just a typical Sunday, just winding down. Lights flickered off one by one. The house grew still, and of course no one could have known that it would be the last night that any of them would ever be seen.
Really the last night that, they would ever get to experience. And, of course, we'll get right into that. But that's what made this really heartbreaking. It was simply a family filled with joy. Who were going home to spend the night with each other, have a sleepover, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Oh, my God.
Check out the collab on what we've done also.
Some similarities.
Nothing good happened to
wow. So that night went great. They had a fun night together. They all settled down for the night. And the morning of June 10th, 1912, the next day, it began like any other. Mary Peckham. It was the Moore's next door neighbor. She was up early. She tended her garden, swept her porch just like any other day. But as the morning creeped on, she did notice something pretty odd. The Moore house had not stirred. Not a sound. No sound of children laughing, no clanging of breakfast plates, no one out to feed the chickens. So by 7 a.m., Mary was pretty concerned. She crossed the yard, knocked on the front door, no answer. She knocked again, nothing. And she kept on trying. It was locked. It was unusual for the family that had no reason to keep out their neighbors. It was a small town. A lot of people left their doors unlocked, really. Mary did what? And
Talia. Chillworthy.
I don't like the sound.
She
of
doesn't
that
go for that at all.
No. I was thinking, okay, 1912, like that makes sense. But people still do that today. Huh. No, I could not. I could not.
I mean, I have a first-hand account of what happens when you don't lock the door because I told this story on our very first episode, but that was 35 episodes ago but when Talia and I were talking about our phobias, she brought up somebody coming into your house. And of course, she already knew this story, but I retold it about, I was sitting on this very couch I'm on right now, broad daylight, like 2 p.m., and I live by myself, and I was watching TV, and all of a sudden, I heard the screen door open.
Oh, God.
And now, but keep in mind that I get my mail comes through a slot.
Gotcha.
So the mailman will open the screen door to put the mail through the mail slot. That's not that crazy. But it did get a little crazier when then the front door just opens up.
Okay.
And just a random man just walks in, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and I'm laying there on the couch and I just said, "Hello." And he just looked at me and then slowly backed out of the house. And obviously he had the wrong house because I live on a block of 10 homes that are identical looking.
Okay, got it.
So, but, I mean, it was a little unsettling for that moment, but right. So, but that's what can happen if you don't lock your door.
Do you now lock your door?
Or worse.
For the most part. Yeah, for the most part.
So I have on my door, there's the top turn lock, and there's also the normal doorknob knock.
Right.
Lock. Sometimes I won't lock the top one and I'll only lock the bottom one.
But
one time I walked out and I accidentally locked myself out of the house.
Oh.
And I was like, no, I don't have my keys. But I had my wallet, which had my cards in it. And I managed to just shimmy my card in between the lock, and the door just popped right open.
Shit.
And I was like, it's that easy? I was like, it's that easy? So
let that be a lesson to all of us.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for
that story. Trying that tomorrow.
I'm gonna have the chair wedged under the doorknob.
That out and not someone else.
Yeah, if there's a big enough gap and you can get something stiff in there, it just pushes open the wedge, keeping the door closed. And it just opens right up.
That's not good.
So
that's Chillworthy.
Now I feel like I need to go try that on all my doors.
All right, so sorry, but I thought that would be a good time to tell that story. But
that was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mary was concerned, so she did what any good neighbor would do. She let out their chickens.
Mary got down to business.
Yeah. She's like, all right, I guess they're sleeping. Let me help them out a little bit. They had a long night. She did some chores around their house. She lingered on their porch, waiting for some sign of life. but there wasn't one. So
That's when she called Ross Moore, who was Josiah's brother, because something was wrong, she said. Something wasn't right. Ross arrived around 8:15 a.m. and he tried the door, still locked, so he used his own key.
or a credit card.
Or credit card. So that's when Ross stepped inside, but Mary stayed behind. A few moments later, Ross stumbled outside. His face was pale, and he told Mary to call the town marshal.
So Marshal Hank Horton was the primary peace officer of Villisca. Once again with the alliterative names. I'm sensing a theme here tonight. You know?
Yeah.
Hank Horton. Primary peace officer there. He was the first officer on scene. By 8:30 a.m., he had arrived at the Moore residence, greeted by, of course, the obviously shaken up Ross Moore. Ross didn't speak much. He simply pointed toward the parlor. Marshal Horton stepped inside, and he continued through. It was quiet. He pushed open the door to the downstairs guest bedroom, and that's when he saw them. Lena and Ina Stillinger, the overnight guests. Their bodies lay on the bed, blankets pulled over their heads, soaked with blood. A gray coat covered part of the scene. And beside the bed was an axe, bloodied, abandoned, its handle slick with dried crimson. It's left behind, as if the killer had no further use for it, or simply no fear of being found.
The girls had been bludgeoned repeatedly with the blunt side of the axe. It was so violent, in fact, that the blood had spattered and reached the walls and ceiling. There were signs that Lena had awakened during the attack. Maybe she tried to fight back. Yep. She had a defensive wound on her arm. And worse, she had been moved, positioned, even after her death, to expose her underarms. Had been removed.
Her undergarments.
Undergarments, yeah, thank you.
Oh, I was gonna say what?
Her
Okay.
undergarments had been removed.
Okay.
So that's when authorities would speculate for years on whether she was assaulted, or if the scene was posed in some twisted ritual. Either way, it was clear that this was not random because there was rage behind it.
Yeah.
This is so horrific, and we're only at 2 people. Like, we have a whole family.
Yep.
This is mind-boggling.
This were the guests.
Right.
They were not even supposed to be there that night.
They weren't. It's really sad because the Stillinger family, the two of them, so they had their 2 daughters, Lena and Ina. They passed away in 1912, of course, because of this. They also had a young boy. I don't believe he grew to be very old, but their son also passed away in 1912. So they lost 3 of their children in the same year. The Stillinger family.
These
It's
poor
really
people.
rough. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nightmare. Complete nightmare.
Yeah. But Marshal Horton, didn't stop there, right? There was more to this house. He moved upstairs, first to the master bedroom. There he found Josiah and Sarah Moore, the parents. Their faces were so disfigured that it was tough to even identify them. It was the master bedroom, their body placement. That's really how they figured it out. Blood was everywhere. And if you were to look up, you would actually see the gouges in the ceiling from when the axe was brought up and then swung back down. There was that much force.
Wow.
It got raised that high into the air that there were holes in the ceiling.
It also makes me wonder, like, I don't know, obviously, like, ceiling distance in homes in 1912, but you would think, too, that the, like, assailant would have been on the taller side. Like, of course, what you're saying with the force too, but like if it was some, like I'm super, super short, I'm nowhere near this. You know what I mean? Like, I just wonder if it was someone who was on the taller side. If this was even
100% could have been.
They could have also been like on the bed as well.
Good
Oh
call.
yeah,
I actually hadn't thought about that.
Because I was gonna say my house was built in the 1920s, and I mean they're like 8 foot, or no, like 10 foot tall, like ceilings. So, so I don't know what, you know, if that time period, what the dimensions exactly were, but yeah, I mean, standing, I could only imagine standing up on a bed, trying to get more like heft into the swing or something.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah.
Like one of the, just like the final blow, just terrible to think about. So that was only the master bedroom. Those were the parents. There was the children's room. Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, all four murdered in their beds, blankets drawn over their faces. No one had stirred. No one had escaped.
And the investigation into the Villisca Axe murders began the very same morning. Marshal Horton cleared the house and he called for the coroner. As he investigated further, more odd details started to reveal themselves. The mirrors were covered. Untouched food and bloody water left in the kitchen.
Bloody
And
water?
a
Like, what do you mean by that?
Go ahead.
I think it was like there was food on a plate, and there was also just water from a cup that was like spilled over on its side, and it was bloody.
Like the killer was comfortable enough to grab a snack afterwards.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
And even
Okay.
had
Yeah.
like the stuff, like the appetite. Ugh, just grotesque.
to even think about that after committing this.
And you're sticking around. Like, let me make a freaking sandwich. Meanwhile, like, not even trying to, like, scurry out of there.
Yeah, to that sandwich comment, there was also a slab of bacon laid next to the axe.
Well, I'm sorry. Next to the axe.
Yep.
Like it was taken
Just-
out of the fridge and just
Hanging out
laid...
with Lena and Ina.
Yeah. Don't know if he was
What
saving it for later or if he was going to eat it during it.
Unbelievable. I can't believe he left it behind. I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also
Wow.
struck by the fact that from what you have both reported now, like this man went into the house, is killing people one by one, but besides one of the two downstairs, nobody like wakes up to I don't know. I mean, I guess if somebody is doing it in the way you're talking about, like probably one blow each is going to do that person in. So they're not necessarily going to be yelling or something, but you would think that there would at least be a noise of with such force. I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah.
100%.
It would also later be determined that the murder killed the parents, Josiah and Sarah, and then killed the kids, and then went back into the master bedroom to deal even more damage.
Yeah, so it was with the investigation, like the doctors, a small little detail. So in the master bedroom, there was a shoe that had filled with blood, and then it got knocked over. So the initial attack on the parents is what dropped that shoe, and then they left for the kids, came back into the master bedroom, hit them even more, and knocked over that now blood-filled shoe to spill
Wow.
even more blood everywhere. Yeah.
And Sarah was the only victim where the sharp side of the axe was used. Everyone else was just bludgeoned by it.
Yeah. That stands out to me. Like, I feel like that wasn't a
It
coincidence.
does.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would explain it. Like, there's... I guess almost using the blunt side of the axe would be more aggressive. It's more brutal, right?
I think, yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So, wanted to give a quicker death to Sarah or something. Not sure.
It's the only way I
Right,
see it.
Right.
The doctors also determined.
may I say?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for 1912, I'm so impressed with the level of detail, how quickly they got on this, like how much was done right out of the gate. When you think, like, comparing it to cases, like so many that we've covered at least, where like
yes.
present day, oh my gosh, so disappointing,
Oh, yeah.
and like it's just crazy to me the difference and what era this was, how many years ago. It's crazy to me. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was it.
The amount of detail, the
Agreed.
amount of records that they were able to like keep. Yeah. Yeah.
I also
The
think
doc-
overall, it's just like, it was a small town. They had one police officer, essentially, their main one. So he managed to show up.
Yeah.
Showed up in like 15 minutes. Like,
What else does he have to do?
True.
Sitting there eating his donut, like, oh, got some work to do.
Yeah. The doctors also determined that the murders happened between midnight and 5 a.m. But something worse, something sinister, something Chillworthy was discovered.
Ooh.
Like
Do
what
you
you
wanna let
did
them
there.
Do you want to let them know what it was, Kai?
Yeah, so the attic hatch of the house showed signs that had recently been disturbed. A bit of the dust was displaced. There were some slight traces of footsteps. And in the attic, there were 2 cigarette butts. Smoked cigarettes. Could that have been where the killer emerged from? Was the killer inside the house before the family ever returned home?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Hiding in the attic?
And for who knows how long, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Waiting for hours, right? Who knows? It's pretty common to leave your doors unlocked back then. So,
Yeah.
Pretty bold
like, what
to be
about-
smoking up there, though.
With the smell.
You know?
Maybe
Yeah.
one of the Moors smoked too.
Well, that's
And
true.
it
That could be.
have-
That
but
could
who
be.
knows? But like, what a vendetta that this guy had, or whoever, against this family. Like, that there was this much thought put in and premeditation to stay in the house, sneak up on them, wipe everybody out. Like, I just feel like the amount of effort, it just sounds so personal.
yeah. Yeah. Agreed. 100%. And so a lot of the theories do revolve around, local people that had connections. So, yeah, we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah. And then the Morse didn't smoke.
Okay. So even bolder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to note that some descriptions, or a lot of them, do believe that the cigarette butts were there, but there are also some recounts out there that say that that piece of cigarette butt information is not true.
Oh.
So
Okay.
there's a bit of that inconsistency there.
Right, right. To be
Who
expected.
knows? Yeah.
And as the investigation began, of course, they found evidence. Like, some people say cigarette butts. Some people say they weren't there. But almost immediately, it went wrong. Because, you see, back then, this was 1912. Before crime scene protocol. Before forensic science. Before we knew how to preserve evidence. And by 9 a.m., the Moore family home was surrounded because word had traveled fast in a small town like Villisca. And within hours, neighbors, reporters, townspeople, and even curious children have walked through the house.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people would walk through the crime scene before it was even properly closed off.
Are you saying with the bodies there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Everybody got in there.
Wowie, wow, wow,
Fingerprints
wow.
were smudged.
Would you guys walk into an active crime
No.
scene if you had the chance to?
No, not like that.
I mean,
Once
I
in a
feel like if
lifetime
that was-
experience, right?
exactly. And if things weren't like, yes, now I would be like, oh, have to preserve things. No. But back then, like, I don't know. You had
If
touched
you
on
see
this,
a
Jade.
bunch of people walking in there, would you walk in there as well?
Oh, what's going on in here, guys?
Then-
Well,
right,
okay, if
right.
you put it in that context, if I didn't know what was in there,
That's true.
potentially I'd be like, oh, okay, well something's in here. Let's see.
Okay.
At this point, though, people knew what happened because
Okay,
there was
well,
like
then I'm
there was
not
like a
going in there.
county-wide like all call that they did to
No.
let people know, so they knew what they were getting themselves into.
Yeah, that's ugh. I can't even imagine the visuals of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets worse though. Right?
Okay.
Evidence was trampled. Go ahead, Talia.
I was just gonna say thank you. I'm so sorry.
you're fine.
The
Go ahead.
pillow or thank you. Not the pillowcases, but the blankets. Just like thinking of like what it looked like in there, and people were in there, and what they saw. It stood out to me how you said that. I think you said for all of them that their faces were covered with the blankets. Don't you find that like an interesting detail? I don't know why you would,
1000%.
like almost like was it. I don't know, like you couldn't see what you did to them. Like you freaking mutilated these poor
Yeah.
people, and then you needed to cover them.
Yeah,
I keep getting a like, and not trying to offend anybody here, but a like religious aspect of you're covering them up, but you're also covering the mirrors, which I know
Yes.
means something.
In the
Which I'm not going to
Jewish
steal
faith.
anybody's thunder, but like covering mirrors is something.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not completely just. There's no rhyme or reason. I feel like there is something happening, but go ahead.
And in Victorian times, they would also cover mirrors during morning periods.
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean the classic, I guess, behavioral profile for covering up your victims, right, is feelings of grief or remorse for killing these people. So, it's just so interesting to kind of think from that perspective to see how that ties in with this all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's
Thank you.
fine. But yeah, people were walking through the house like an active crime scene that had just happened the night before.
Bonkers.
Fingerprints were smudged, evidence trampled, and whatever trace of the killer might have remained was likely swept away with the dust of like the townspeople's boots. And this is where it gets interesting because some people took things, some people moved things, people touched the axe.
Taking
some
things as
people took
mementos.
Pieces of
I was
Josiah's
gonna use that
skull.
same word.
Yep, some people took part of the skull.
Oh my God.
They would take the little fragments.
Who are these neighbors? Oh my god.
So at this point, the scene.
For all we
was
know, the
just
killer
not-
could have been one of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just taking
At
a
this point, it wasn't
a
just
tour, as
compromised, like,
Talia
it
would
was
say.
just obliterated. Wow. Yeah.
Obliterated?
Thank you. Yes.
Wow.
We knew what you meant. We knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah. So
That's
they still had
crazy.
to search for the killer, even with the whole crime scene just gone.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of suspects, a lot of potential suspects. But we'll be focusing on the main three.
So, like you guys mentioned, it could have been anyone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who went inside of this house. So there was so many potential suspects, so many potential witnesses that they interviewed. And so there was probably about, I want to say around 10 total suspects that were suspected here in this case. But yeah, like Jay said, there's three main ones, I guess, that we'll talk about. First was a man named Frank F. Jones. So Frank Jones, he was a prominent local businessman. He was also a state senator for Iowa there. He was Josiah's former employer. They had some history, right? You mentioned something about it being a personal attack. And this is where some personal history sort of comes into play. Years before the murder, Josiah had quit Jones's company in sort of a a battle of business, and he opened up his own farm equipment store. And so he took a lucrative like John Deere contract with him as well. So he took that away from Frank Jones. So there was a bit of animosity. It caused a rift between the two. Some people said it was as bad as a vendetta. So, of course, there were the rumors, right? Had Josiah been having an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law? That's something that was explored. So, of course, the question was, did Frank Jones kill out of revenge? The investigators, they looked into him. There was this personal motive, but they didn't really see him as maybe himself being a violent man, and no direct evidence ever tied him to the scene. So people thought that maybe he hired someone to do the job. And that brings us into our second suspect. His name was, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, yeah. Which was William Blackie Mansfield.
Mm-hmm.
So Blackie Mansfield was known, he was a known criminal and suspect for the axe murder. He was believed to have killed his own wife, child, and in-laws with an axe in Blue Island.
Sounds concerning.
In Illinois, yeah, Blue Island, Illinois. Just 2 years after Villisca. And the crime scene was disturbingly similar because at that crime scene in Blue Island, Illinois, there was also mirrors covered and an axe left behind at the crime scene. And the victims also had their faces bludgeoned beyond recognition.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. He also fit the timeline.
Yeah.
Blackie was reportedly in the area when the Villisca murders happened, and then he was gone. He was arrested, investigated, but no surprise, he was released for lack of evidence.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. When I was looking at info from this case, I realized there's a lot of axe murders that happen. Unfortunately. Who knew an axe would be a great murder weapon?
Easily accessible.
Seems clunky, right?
A little, yeah.
I just keep thinking about that guy from American Horror Story, the Axeman from Coven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jazz Man or whatever.
Yeah, the Axeman of New Orleans.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. There's actually been some like vague theories that they could have been the same person.
Jet.
Yeah. So, lots of different intertwined axe stories, but of course with this guy, William Blackie Mansfield, it didn't really fit eventually. But these two were investigated. Alongside them, a man named Reverend George Kelly was also investigated. And he ended up being the main suspect here, the most plausible person that they did investigate. So I find it really interesting that you guys mentioned there was almost this religious or guilt sort of basis behind it at some points, with covering up the faces, covering up the mirrors. And of course we have a reverend who is one of the main suspects here. Yeah. He was a traveling preacher, actually. He was from England, so he wasn't even from the States. He was a smaller man, actually, as opposed to the taller person that we sort of talked a little bit about earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he was small, he was peculiar, he's described as having a high-pitched voice and eyes that never seemed to blink enough. So kind of just take a second to imagine, that.
Already
I'm
unsettling.
imagining like an unblinking elf.
Okay.
Look out the window, it's just...
Well, isn't that what people now refer to as like a short king? Right?
What's that?
Like short king spring, or like they basically say like guys who are short, they call them short king.
Like, you're a king too. You don't need to be worried about your height, you short king.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know about this. The kiddos. Kiddo talk.
What it is. I'm here for this.
Jazz.
Anyway, Reverend Kelly was an odd man. he was not an elf, but he was kind of worse than that. As an adult, he was accused of peeping on girls, even asking them to pose nude for him. So he was not a good guy.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want to talk a little more about him, Jay.
Sure. So he had arrived at Villisca the day of the murders to attend the very same Children's Day service that the Moore family had been involved in. And he left town early the next morning, hours before the bodies were discovered. So later he began writing bizarre letters to authorities. He had a weird fascination and obsession with the case. He would respond with his own details of the case, even claiming to have possibly witnessed the murders himself.
Okay.
Yeah. There was like a great detail of suspicion, but nothing ever came of it, especially because of Kelly's known mental illness. The authorities questioned the reality of what he was describing because 2 years later, Kelly was arrested. Not for the Villisca murders, but for sexually harassing a woman that applied to be his secretary.
Oh.
And then 3 years later came the confession. The Villisca confession. Kai?
Wow.
Yeah. So at this point, it is 1917. It's 5 years after the Villisca murders happened. Now, we mentioned he had correspondence. He wrote letters to authorities, increasingly getting more bizarre. He did have known mental illness. He suffered from mental breakdowns as a child, and a lot of people believed he had some type of schizophrenia in a way. Because in his confession, which did come, he claimed he heard voices in his head, telling him to slay utterly. He said he couldn't resist, that God had chosen him.
Yeah.
And I think that, in a way, it sort of ties into, once again, maybe covering up the victims. Like, he was told to do it. Maybe he didn't want to do it, in a way.
How old
But he made
was
this confession. Not sure at this point. I couldn't find like a birthday for him. I don't know if you could, Jay.
I couldn't find that either.
Listen, she loves to ask these questions that are gonna be like, oh, I wish I knew that, but I don't.
It's fine.
I was just trying.
Really good. I'm surprised she didn't ask you statistics on axe murderers yet, or anything
I
like
do
that.
love
Yeah, 1 in 5
statistics. I was
murders.
just trying to get an image.
I understand.
Fair.
Anyway,
I understand.
Sorry. Continue.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
I would like to ask something.
Yeah.
Now I would like to ask something.
Okay.
All right.
With the covering of the mirrors, am I making this up, or is there some type of connotation to they would cover the mirrors so that the spirit would not get trapped or lost in the house? Okay. All right.
Yeah. So they could actually ascend to, the afterlife.
Right. Okay.
Heaven.
That's what I was thinking, like, if going off of what you were saying, if he was doing this, let's say in God's name, I mean, he would want them to go to heaven, one assumes. So it's kind of like, I feel like if he was doing it for those reasons, it makes sense to be covering the mirrors because you're basically making it more efficient for their souls to ascend.
You're sending them sooner,
Yes.
essentially.
Okay.
He's
and I
a
think
good
the-
guy.
Yeah, of course. He's acting in God's word, right?
Absolutely.
During the murders, he was 33 or 34 years old.
Gotcha.
Thank you
There you
so
go, Talia.
much.
There
Thank
you
right
go.
Now, I can have an accurate image of this little elf. Thank you.
Yeah, a 33 or 34-year-old elf.
Right. Thank you.
Oh my god. I think the investigators also had a similar line of thinking, right? You know, there was so much that lined up with this reverend being the murderer, with the mirrors, with his weird behavior, with his confession. But as all good stories go, that confession didn't stick. This charge didn't
Of course.
stick. Because Reverend Kelly, he recanted it. He said that he was coerced by the authorities, that they, forced him into saying this confession. It didn't fully match the crime scene. And so because of these inconsistencies, in his first trial, it ended with a hung jury. It was 11-1, I believe. And then for his second trial, he had a full acquittal of all of the charges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was never actually formally charged.
And that was pattern. Suspect after suspect, and it was just theory after theory. But there was just no justice for this family because the trail just went cold.
Until about 2017. Pretty recently.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, right?
I thought you were going to be like 20 years ago. No. 2017.
Yep.
2017. Now, okay, don't get your hopes up too high. This case wasn't cracked open. But there were some new developments sort of that happened. In 2017, a new suspect was actually proposed by a man named Bill James and his daughter Rachel McCarthy James. They wrote a novel called The Man from the Train. So they wrote this book, and in this book, they detail how they believed a man named Paul Mueller was responsible for the Villisca Axe Murders. So what initially started out as sort of an obsession with trying to figure out who was the killer in the Villisca Axe Murders sort of turned into a whole journey of researching this man named Paul Mueller for these authors, and they put it all in their book, which is pretty cool. According to them, Mueller was a serial killer, active from 1898 to 1912, and believed by them to have killed at least 59 people, possibly over 100 people, in at least 14 separate incidents over the years that were all believed to just be standalone occurrences by the local authorities. So, yeah.
You have something to say?
You got something?
I didn't know if you guys could see my face that I wanted to ask something.
Yes,
the
that's what we
screen
thought you had
frozen
something to
for
say.
Like 10 minutes. Oh, okay. Yes.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay.
So why do they think then? So like if these happened in 1912 and that's when they think the span stopped or his spree stopped, why do they think it stopped? Like what did they think happened to him? Are you getting to that? Am I jumping the gun?
No, so I think that what it was is that he sort of just faded off. I think that's where they think the trail ended. They couldn't really connect any other axe murders past that.
Oh, good
essentially.
call. Good call. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, there were lots of axe murders, like I mentioned. And a lot of the times, the local police just thought it was a one-time thing, someone local. They never considered that they might be connected in some way, but the authors of this book did. Their book was called The Man from the Train because they believed that he did travel by train. A lot of the victims were actually very close to railroad tracks.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of those connections.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep.
He struck at night, and he used the blunt side of an axe to kill his victims.
Oh.
He would cover the victims, cover the windows, leave the axe behind, and lock the doors before he left. So, in all these cases there was those similarities. Some people believe this theory, others say there's a lack of evidence to truly connect him to the Villisca murders. At some point, the FBI actually sort of considered this theory as well, with Paul Mueller, but nothing ever came of it. There was just no actual evidence.
Yeah. And as of now, of 2025, the Villisca house still stands. A white 2-story home at 508 East 2nd Street. To some, it's just another old house. But to others, it's the most haunted home in America. Because what happened in that house didn't stay in 1912. Mm-hmm. And this is where our little paranormal side comes into the light.
Run a true crime and paranormal podcast.
So
we had to
a double feature.
Exactly. So after the murders, the house has changed hands multiple times. For years, it was just another rental. No one stayed there too long. Tenants reported unexplained cold spots, disembodied voices, doors that slammed shut on their own, and objects moving without warnings. Children claimed to see shadow figures and foots by their beds. One woman said that she saw a bloodied little boy standing in the kitchen who vanished when the lights got turned on. And it wasn't until the 1990s that the house got national attention again. That's when it was purchased by Darwin and Martha Lynn, who restored it back to look exactly as it did in 1912, which means no electricity, no plumbing, just lanterns and period furniture.
Wow.
So we won't take up too much time with this, but but yeah, it is now. It's a national historic landmark. It's also open for tours, so you can take tours of the place. You can do overnight stays. You can sleep inside there.
Oh my god!
Yep. So lots of paranormal investigators have gone through over the years, and lots of things. Visitors will say that footsteps happen upstairs when no one's there. Doors creak open slowly. Lights flicker. And there are actually quite a bit of reports of people being sort of touched or even like softly pushed while they're inside of the house. The hard thing about paranormal cases is that there's never any concrete fact about them, right? It's all just like anecdotes from people. So it's really hard to ever confirm these things. But in its current state, the Villisca is sort of known as the home of the Axe Murders, but also a paranormal hotspot nowadays.
Yep.
Wow.
So people have claimed to, like I said, hear children's whispers. There's EVPs, like electronic voice phenomena that says, "Get out," or "He's still here." And investigators allegedly feel like they're being like stabbed in the chest. So there's different things happening in the house depending on who you talk to, who goes there. By the day, there's tours offered for about $20.
Pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it's a good price.
They'll walk you through the house where the Moore family lived, where they prayed, and where they died. You get to see the Sillinger's girl's bedroom, the attic, the bloodstained mirror that was covered. You also get to see the closet where the children may have tried to hide. But at night, that's where the lanterns flicker. The house goes quiet. And then some say that the spirits of the victims try to be heard. And then we have a couple stories if you guys have time for those stories of people
super
that have...
short. There's like
Lay
a
it
short
on,
like
man.
Reddit recount that we found of someone who did
Yeah.
stay.
I mean, all of that description that you just gave, not being funny, it does give me chills. That sounds just not my cup of tea.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you ever? What is it?
Would the three of you stay in this house overnight?
Yes.
Not like alone necessarily, but like however you'd like it to be, with a group of people or
I'd
one
stay.
other person.
Yeah.
Or
I would.
yeah.
I'd do an overnight.
How about no? No.
What about you, Talia?
I
Would
don't
you?
think I told you I don't like the adult slumber parties, but maybe I have to
you
be
like your
home
own
at
bed.
night.
Oh,
Right.
God.
But I would definitely go like for a day trip. Like I would step foot in there, hell yeah, but I would
Okay.
not sleep over.
Do the overnight stay? Okay. So we'll let you know what happens that night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Be
not
safe.
necessarily. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying I wouldn't go on a tour, but that would have to be like a 2 p.m. You know,
And they do those. They do the 2
Yeah.
p.m. tours.
yeah,
For
during
$20.
Yeah.
right. But yeah, I mean, I have a coworker who she travels like to go to like all of those places and stays overnight, like the Conjuring house and shit. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. So
Do you want to tell one of those stories, Jay?
Yeah. So I have a quick story from Reddit. And this one just says, stayed at the Villisca Axe Murder house, and now I'm in tears. And it says...
That's the title.
Yeah. So it says, so I'm not a believer in ghosts until tonight. My family and a couple of friends decided to spend the night at the Villisca Axe Murder house. Quick history, June 10th, 1912, 8 people, 6 of which are children, were tragically murdered by an unknown axe-wielding murderer. A month ago, my mother has the idea of visiting the place overnight. I was ecstatic. I did not believe in ghosts, but like pretending they're real. So fast forward to today, we packed our things and rode with our friends to the house. Yeah, we lasted from 3 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. To start the house just felt off. Later at 10-ish, three of us in the kids' room and one of us in the closet trying to get one of the kids to open the door. We were able to get Ida. We tried going through the names to open the door twice. Later, around 1, we were using the EVP to get the kids' room and try to ask them questions. How do I and then that's where it ends. And they said, question, how do I upload video footage? Because we got both of them on tape. And then there's a reply there from someone else that says, my brother and I stayed here the night. I love the whole idea of ghosts, but I admit I'm skeptical. At one point, I scared my brother. He fell asleep, and I decided to go upstairs and sit in the kids' room. As I sat there, I heard my brother sneaking up the stairs, and I assumed he was trying to scare me, so I scooted into a corner. I sat there waiting for him, but after about 15 minutes, I got up and looked around the corner. No one was there. I didn't hear him go back down. I don't know if it was a ghost or not, but it was definitely freaky.
who the hell is playing hide and seek in this house?
Lena and Ina.
Horrible.
I think honestly, I'd have like I'd have a morbid curiosity of like hiding up in the attic and just spending time up there to know like what it was like if the murderer was like actually waiting up there. I don't know.
Good
Something
call.
like that.
Very brave of you.
What the house sounds like when it settles down.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, it's been covered over the years on different channels. I don't know if you guys know much about BuzzFeed Unsolved back during their time. Ryan and Shane. So BuzzFeed Unsolved, it's 2 guys, Ryan Bergara and Shane Madej, a super great duo. Ryan is like the total scaredy cat believer. Shane is complete skeptic. He's like completely composed. He literally insults the ghosts because he does not believe them.
Yep.
And so one of their early episodes, they actually did it on the Villisca house. And so they go in, they do, their investigations. So they walked the halls, they asked the spirits questions. They even did spend some time in the attic. Of course, Ryan was terrified. Shane was unbothered as always. But even both of them agreed that the house definitely had a vibe, you know, as
Ooh.
a lot of places do.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that brings us to the end of this. So it brings us to the question: was the murder conducted by a preacher with a twisted mind? Was it a hit job gone wrong? Or was it a stranger in the attic just listening for hours? Whatever the truth is, Villisca doesn't rest easy. And if you ever spend the night there, don't be surprised if a toy rolls on its own. Or if a voice just whispers, "Mommy," when no one's in the room. So be sure to check your closets, double lock your doors, and maybe skip
Put
the
the
attic.
chair.
Yeah,
Jam it under there.
definitely.
Right.
Awesome.
Oh my god.
That's a story.
Well, you guys did an amazing job. That
Oh my
was
God,
one
yes.
hell
you.
of a story.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anything you guys have on your mind? And you
Yeah.
wanna just get out there. I don't know.
I mean, my only thing, it's not about the story, more so about, like, obviously as being tour guides, I mean, have you experienced something of this nature?
Good question.
Murder?
Jay?
Not murder, but
Thankfully,
like,
no.
has someone pushed you?
Anything of
toy
like the
rolled
paranormal
out in
nature?
front of you?
Yes. Something that happened very early on when I started working there. It's something I haven't shared in a while, actually.
I think I know where you're going.
When
with
you
this,
first
yeah.
start, they put you on people's tours, so you get an idea of how every tour guide does their tour a little bit different. And in one of the first rooms, they play a video with like a quick, maybe like a minute story of like who Sarah was. And I was standing next to a tour guide. I was standing on her right hand side, and we're watching the group like right in front of us. The video's playing on the left side of the room. And there's nothing on the right side of me. There's just like a wall. And there's like a picture there. And as the video's playing and we're just watching the people, it's probably like maybe like 30 seconds, 40 seconds into the video or something like that. And that's when I heard someone whisper in my ear, "Winchester?" Not the entire word, not the whole word. It was more of like, "Winchester," and then it faded.
Weird.
Like they got tired. They didn't have energy to say the whole word. They got bored or something. It's
They got bored.
like, I don't know. Like
Didn't have
maybe
the breath.
Exactly. Like they ran out of breath. I turned to the right hand side. There's like 5 feet of like nothing, and then there's a wall. I'm a new tour guide. I don't say anything. I'm like, cool. Maybe sound carries easy through the house. Maybe I heard something else. For an entire hour, I don't say anything because I'm like shadowing this tour guide. Like I'm still learning the ropes. After the tour, I talked to the tour guide that I was there with, and I'm like, hey, I was like, did you say anything in that room while you were playing the video? And she looks at me, she's like, no, why? And then I told her what I heard, and she's like, no, she's like, I didn't say anything in that room. Like, I just stayed quiet during the video. That is the only time that I've like actually had something or someone whisper in my ear. And you know when someone whispers in your ear, it's a very distinct sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was like my first experience at the Winchester, I would say.
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever heard
before.
that story.
Alrighty.
No, I haven't heard that before. So.
Yeah.
Cool. That's the thing, like, when it comes to ghost stories at the Winchester Mystery House, you can ask anyone, and nobody's really going to have, like, a big experience. You know, nothing's going to, like, jump out at you or, like, huge shadow figures. It's always the small things. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, you walk into a room, the chandelier's swinging, and as soon as you, like, acknowledge it, it stops, or something like that.
Yeah.
We've had tour guides who literally have had like shouting matches with like chandeliers because they won't stop swinging and stuff like that. So it's small things.
Wow.
One time I was coming out of the basement. This is pretty big, kind of creepy basement there, of course. And there's these big, like, rectangular double doors that we have to guide close so that they can latch together. And it's one of the smoothest doors to open and close in the house. There's, like, no resistance. They just sort of go with where you direct them. But one time I was coming out of the basement, and as I was going to close them, they completely slammed shut on me. And I actually had to rip my hands out in order to stop them from being, like, completely, like, smashed in between these doors closing. Yeah. So the doors, like, rattled shut. And like I said, I'm a skeptic. So my first thought wasn't like, oh my God, a ghost just tried to shut me out of the basement. It was, where's the breeze coming from? You know, it was what pushed this door closed.
Right.
I literally, to this day, I have zero explanation for it. And sort of I downplay it to myself because maybe I don't want to believe that happened, but truly it did feel like something wanted me out of the basement and it like shut the doors closed on me. So
I am in the same boat when I play the video for the guests. I will stand in different areas in that carriage house just to see if I can hear something else again. I'm like, was it standing here? Is there something else? And it's never happened again. So once again, it's not like I can like debunk it or explain it. It's just one of those weird things that happens.
Yeah.
cool.
Well, thank you for those experiences.
Of course. Thanks for having us on. This has been awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. It was so fun.
And before we let you go, could you tell the chillers where they can find you?
Great name.
Yeah. Kai, care to let them know?
Yeah, so we are, you can find us at Chambers of the Occult everywhere, on every streaming website, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are on Instagram as Chambers of the Occult. We are on Twitter as COTO Podcast. We don't really post too much. But you can also just find us through our website, chambersoftheoccult.com.
Damn, well,
And
quite
you'll
official.
have that everything, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all thanks to Jay. So.
Okay.
But yeah, reach out and we'll reach back out.
Yeah. But yeah, once again, thanks for having us. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
well,
you
you're welcome.
so much for coming on. It was so fun. Loved meeting you guys, and just I think we vibed very nicely.
100%.
Oh, this was fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with the delay.
Yeah.
I'm so
No, but
sorry.
this one
No,
was
you're
good.
fine. It
That
was
very
funny.
good.
It was
Yeah.
funny. It was good.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes.
So, as always,
Stay safe.
and stay chill. And
Bye,
thank you, everybody.
Bye.
You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.